people look like they have a much better life than they really do. People are posting pictures of when they're really happy. They're modifying those pictures to be better looking.
The Federal Trade Commission has confirmed it is investigating Facebook's privacy practices in the wake of the Cambridge Analytica scandal.
The unintended consequences of a network when it grows to 1 billion or 2 billion people, and it literally changes your relationship with society, with each other, with it probably interferes with productivity in weird ways. God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains.
Even if they're not modifying the pictures, they're at least selecting the pictures for the best lighting, the best angle. So people basically seem they're way better looking than they basically really are.
Right.
And they're way happier seeming than they really are. So if you look at everyone on Instagram, you might think, man, there are all these happy, beautiful people, and I'm not that good looking, and I'm not happy. So I must suck, and that's going to make people sad. So when in fact, those people you think are super happy, actually not that happy. Some of them are really depressed. They're very sad. Some of the happiest seeming people, actually some of the saddest people in reality. And nobody looks good all the time. It doesn't matter who you are.
If the thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them to really understand it, that thought process was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. And that means that we need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever. And that's going to get you to contribute more content, and that's going to get you, more likes and comments. I mean, it's a social validation feedback loop that it's like it's exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. And I think that the inventors, creators, and it's me, it's Mark, it's the Kevin Systrom at Instagram, it's all of these people, understood this consciously, and we did it anyway.
Turn it off. That's what I would say. It's hard for young people now because they're hooked. They're addicted. If you don't think you're addicted, and I'm talking about anyone, from the highest to the lowest, if you don't think you're addicted, then see if you can turn it off for a week. It got quiet in here, didn't it? Didn't it get real quiet? It's a tool, so we should use it. God has blessed us with free will. Now it's free will magnified, free will on steroids. You're free to go in any direction you want. It will allow you, and it's not the enemy. It's just it's just a reflection of our own free will. And we all want to be liked, but now we want to be liked by 16 million. And will now some of us do anything to be liked? We used to do anything to be liked, but it was by the person in front of you. Now it's to be liked by 16 million people that you don't know. We have to ask ourselves, what is the long-term, if not the short-term effect of too much information?
I feel tremendous guilt. I think we all knew in the back of our minds, even though we feigned this whole line of there probably aren't any really bad unintended consequences. I think in the back, deep recesses of our minds, we kind of knew something bad could happen. But I think the way we defined it was not like this. It literally is a point now where I think we have created tools that are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works. That is truly where we are. And I would encourage all of you, as the future leaders of the world, to really internalize how important this is. If you feed the beast, that beast will destroy you. If you push back on it, we have a chance to control it and rein it in. And it is a point in time where people need to hard break from some of these tools and the things that you rely on. The short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops that we have created are destroying how society works. No civil discourse, no cooperation, misinformation, mistruth. And it's not an American problem. This is not about Russian ads. This is a global problem. So we are in a really bad state of affairs right now, in my opinion. It is eroding the core foundations of how people behave by and between each other. And I don't have a good solution. You know, my solution is I just don't use these tools anymore. I haven't for years. And it's weird, I guess I kind of just innately didn't want to get programmed. And so I just tuned it out. But I didn't confront it. And now to see what's happening, it really bums me out.
And tell us, I love that analogy you made on 60 Minutes about the slot machine.
Yep.
That the phone is really a slot machine, and every time people are checking, they want to get some sort of goose.
I mean, it's built into our brains a variable schedule reward. So if you pull a lever and sometimes you get a reward and sometimes you don't, sometimes you get a reward like you're invited to the Bill Maher show, and sometimes you pull your lever and you get a newsletter on an email you want to throw away, it makes it addictive. And so everything about our phone accidentally becomes a slot machine because it could be a text message from someone you love or it could be nothing. But the more frequently it buzzes, the more it conditions us to check more. And so it's obviously leading to these kind of addictive problems that everybody feels. And the reason, though, that this we need you to use it as much as possible thing comes from is because of the attention economy. There's only so much attention.
The attention economy, right.
Because when information gets abundant, the only thing that's left is attention gets scarce because there's only our lives to fit it inside of. So then it becomes hyper-competitive.
And
so,
the reason people are stupider, to your point, is because they don't read anymore. And the reason they don't read, there's no time.
Yep.
Because they're doing this bullshit.
Well, and because this race for attention means I have to go lower on the brainstem. So I would do better in the attention economy if I offer you a short, simple story soundbite that confirms your beliefs about the world than if I show you a complex, nuanced, oh man, the world is really complicated. We don't have time for that. And the more it invisibly becomes this slippery slope down to what we're in right now. The thing is, there's this myth that technology is neutral, that it's up to us to choose how we use it. Therefore, these platforms are not responsible. It is not true. Because
not true.
Because
right.
These companies, not because they're evil, but they need to get as much attention as possible.
They're evil.
So if something that is sensational, something is sensational, they have to show you the sensational thing that gets more attention than if they showed you complex things that got less attention. They have to. And anybody who runs a website or knows this.
Consumer internet businesses are about exploiting psychology. And that is one where you want to fail fast because people are unpredictable, and so we want to psychologically figure out how to manipulate you as fast as possible and then give you back that dopamine hit. We did that brilliantly at Facebook. Instagram has done it. WhatsApp has done it. Snapchat has done it. Twitter has done it. So there are great examples. WeChat is doing it. There are great examples of failing fast is the right path to exploiting psychology of mass populations of people. I did a great job there, and I think that business overwhelmingly does positive good in the world. Where I have decided to spend my time is to take the capital that they rewarded me with and now focus on the structural changes that I can control. I can't control that. I can control my decisions, which is I don't use this shit. I can control my kids' decisions, which is they're not allowed to use this shit. And then I can go focus on diabetes and education and climate change. And that's what I can do. But everybody else has to soul search a little bit more about what you're willing to do, because your behaviors, you don't realize it, but you are being programmed. It was unintentional, but now you got to decide how much you're willing to give up, how much of your intellectual independence. And don't think, oh yeah, not me, I'm fucking genius, I'm at Stanford. You're probably the most likely to fucking fall for it. Because you were fucking checkboxing your whole goddamn life. No offense, guys.
Often what people have to do to get themselves out of an addictive process is to find something better to do to replace it. And so I would say the problem with the gadgets, and I mean they're amazing things, is that they proximately interfere with medium to long-term goals, I would say. And so I think the first thing you have to do to bring them under control is figure out what it is that their use is interfering with. It has to be something important, right? So you think, well, I want to do something important. Well, what is that? Oh, it could be personal. Maybe you want to have a relationship. You want to get married. You want to have kids. You want to have a career that's meaningful. You want to have a life. You want to have an Abrahamic adventure and be the father of nations, let's say. Well, you can't be ratting away on your cell phone and doing that. And so I think part of it is to set your sights high and make a plan and figure out who you could be and see if obsessive utilization of smartphone fits into that vision of nobility. And it will partly, because they're unbelievably powerful communication devices, but so often it's for lack of something better to do, and it also interferes.
We know that engagement with social media and our cell phones releases a chemical called dopamine. That's why when you get a text, it feels good, right? So we've all had it where you're feeling a little bit down or feeling a bit lonely, and so you send out 10 texts to 10 friends, hi, 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 because it feels good when you get a response, right? Right? It's why we count the likes. It's why we go back 10 times to see if my Instagram is growing slower. Did I do something wrong? Do they not like me anymore? Right? The trauma for young kids to be unfriended, right? Because we know when you get a hit of dopamine, which feels good. It's why we like it. It's why we keep going back to it. Dopamine is the exact same chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, when we drink, and when we gamble. In other words, it's highly, highly addictive. Right? We have age restrictions on smoking, gambling, and alcohol, and we have no age restrictions on social media and cell phones, which is the equivalent of opening up the liquor cabinet and saying to our teenagers, hey, by the way, this adolescence thing, if it gets you down. But that's basically what's happening. That's basically what's happening, right? That's basically what happened. You have an entire generation that has access to an addictive, numbing chemical called dopamine through social media and cell phones as they're going through the high stress of adolescence. Why is this important? Almost every alcoholic discovered alcohol when they were teenagers. When we're very, very young, the only approval we need is the approval of our parents. And as we go through adolescence, we make this transition where we now need the approval of our peers. Very frustrating for our parents, very important for us. It allows us to acculturate outside of our immediate families into the broader tribe, right? It's a highly, highly stressful and anxious period of our lives, and we're supposed to learn to rely on our friends. Some people, quite by accident, discover alcohol and numbing effects of dopamine to help them cope with the stresses and anxieties of adolescence. Unfortunately, that becomes hardwired in their brains, and for the rest of their lives, when they suffer significant stress, they will not turn to a person, they will turn to the bottle. Social stress, financial stress, career stress, that's pretty much the primary reasons why an alcoholic drinks, right? What's happening is because we're allowing unfettered access to these dopamine-producing devices and media, basically it's becoming hardwired, and what we're seeing is as they grow older, too many kids don't know how to form deep, meaningful relationships. Their words, not mine. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial. They will admit that their friends, that they don't count on their friends, they don't rely on their friends, they have fun with their friends, but they also know that their friends will cancel on them if something better comes along. Deep, meaningful relationships are not there because they never practice the skill set, and worse, they don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. So when significant stress starts to show up in their lives, they're not turning to a person, they're turning to a device, they're turning to social media, they're turning to these things which offer temporary relief. We know, the science is clear, we know that people who spend more time on Facebook suffer higher rates of depression than people who spend less time on Facebook, right? These things balanced. Alcohol is not bad, too much alcohol is bad. Gambling is fun, too much gambling is dangerous, right? There's nothing wrong with social media and cell phones. It's the imbalance, right? If you're sitting at dinner with your friends and you're texting somebody who's not there, that's a problem. That's an addiction. If you're sitting in a meeting with people you're supposed to be listening to and speaking, and you put your phone on the table, face up or face down, I don't care, that sends a subconscious message to the room that you're just not that important to me right now, right? That's what happens. And the fact that you cannot put it away is because you are addicted, right? If you wake up and you check your phone before you say good morning to your girlfriend, boyfriend, or spouse, you have an addiction. And like all addiction, in time, it'll destroy relationships, it'll cost time, and it'll cost money, and it'll make your life worse.
Millennials get a bad rap, being entitled, unfocused. You say that's not true.
Every single generation is affected by whatever's going on in the world
during their formative years. So if somebody grew up during the Great Depression or the Second World War, they may grow up to be miserly, for example, or frugal, wanting to squeeze every drip of toothpaste out of the tube. Well, of course, it's because they grew up during, rations. Of course they're going to be like that. Well, likewise, this generation that grew up during the turn of the millennium, they came of age at the millennium, grew up in a time of technology that we didn't have. And it's had an effect on how they view the world. Some of it positive, some of it more challenging. My biggest concern is the unfettered access to social media and cell phones, quite frankly, because there's a biology to these things that are as addictive as alcohol, nicotine, and gambling.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
Therefore, I don't have a cell phone. I have a flip phone.
Which is wonderful.
It's all I use it for is to talk.
Yeah.
I like the sound of the voice. Why has it overtaken us? In other words, I deliberately will not have it because I know I'd be addicted.
It's about balance. It's not that they're inherently bad, and it's not that texting or social media is inherently bad, but it's when it gets out of balance. If somebody carries their phone wherever they go, like they physically feel anxiety if they put it down. When they're with their friends and have to have it up the entire time looking at the phone while they're with their friends. When they wake up in the morning and check their phone before they say good morning to the person sleeping next to them, these are problems. This is out of balance.
What do they do for it, though? There's centers where you go for drug addiction and alcohol addiction. Is there a center now for...
There's starting to be, but it's not yet officially recognized as an addiction in this country. And so we don't treat it as an addiction. We don't even recognize it as an addiction. So we accuse more, all generations, but it's exaggerated in the millennial generation for being entitled or whatever other...
Will we have to deal then with withdrawal?
Yes. I mean, that's just like any addiction. You're going to go through withdrawal before you find health again.
Here's the thing. The world we live in isn't real. Social media isn't real. And by design, social media rewards us for showing our best life. The edited, posed, champagne, Michelin star, holiday, orchestrated best angle of our life. The highlight reel. But you don't ever see real life, the 99% of our lives, the behind the scenes, the unglamorous, unfiltered, day-to-day, bland normality. And you end up comparing your behind the scenes to other people's fake highlight reel and using others as a mirror or benchmark for how you should look, how successful you should be, or how you should live. These fake comparisons will only serve to make you feel inadequate and inferior to something that isn't even real. Research continually shows that comparing your life to someone else's creates envy, low self-confidence, low self-esteem, and depression. You compare yourself to other people every single day, consciously or subconsciously, and no matter what I say, you're not going to stop because comparing one thing to another is a natural human thing to do. Whether we want to admit it or not, a big reason why anything has value is because there's something worse or better to compare it to. Think about it. An old brick of a mobile phone with a big aerial is only considered amazing in a world before the smartphone. The horse and carriage is only considered a phenomenal mode of transport until the car comes along. The answer isn't to stop making comparisons because unfortunately we can't control that. But you have to change the object of your comparison from someone else to yourself. You have to measure yourself against yourself. And by doing this, you start at a base point where you consider yourself to be perfectly fine exactly how you are. But it also is the most effective, motivating, and healthy way to work to improve yourself. You'll become your happiest self when you stop putting pressure on yourself to be more like someone else and when you start comparing real to real.